Welcome to the Girl Talk Mental Health. Girl Talk Mental Health dares to go where others won't. We unpack the hard truths about mental health, dissect trending topics, and challenge the stereotypes and stigmas holding us back. From navigating the 6 dimensions of wellness to redefining social norms, this is more than a discussion. It's a revolution in how we care for our minds and souls. Ready for bold, honest conversations that spark change? Let's dive in. It's time for real talk with real impact.
Have you ever wondered why certain patterns, emotional pain, silence, abuse, fear, or shame, seem to run in your family like an invisible thread? In this groundbreaking episode of Girl Talk Mental Health, we're breaking the silence and equipping you with real tools to heal generational trauma and finally break the cycle. We have our special guest, Miss Ada Lloyd, and she's going to bring some insight, wisdom, and generational healing strategies to help you reclaim your identity, rebuild your foundation, and restore what trauma tried to steal. Whether it's emotional wounds from a toxic upbringing or learned behaviors passed through generations, healing is possible, and it starts with you. So let's welcome our special guest, Miss Ada Lloyd, to the show.
Thanks so much, Virginia. It's an absolute delight to be here with you today.
Great. So tell the audience a little bit about you and who you are.
Well, I'm the emotional chain breaker, and it started with breaking emotional chains for myself because I grew up being sexually abused by my father long before it was on the public radar. There were no talk shows, there were no books, there was certainly no internet. And so a child in this situation feels like there's something wrong with them. And it's isolating. And that was the world that I found the way to escape from. And that's the world I want to help you escape from.
Ooh, sound like we about to have a good show today. I appreciate it. So are you ready to make some impact?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right, let's go. So what are some hidden ways generational trauma shows up in our daily choices, especially when we think we've moved on?
So I'm going to divert 1 second and say that things like guilt, shame, and fear of judgment, we generally recognize. But then there are the things that we don't recognize. Things like imposter syndrome, addiction, anxiety, depression, loneliness, trust issues, relationship issues, even hoarding. Because these are, if you had a really bad headache and you had tried Tylenol and everything you could find and nothing was touching the headache, and you finally went to the doctor and he said you have a brain tumor, would you want him to heal the headache or would you want him to heal the brain tumor? Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going for the brain tumor. And so all of these things, that headache was a symptom of the brain tumor. All of those things that I just mentioned are symptoms that almost inevitably begin in childhood, but we don't recognize them as things that are the result of a childhood experience. We put them in a little box, society identifies them, and so you can do this, and you won't have that problem anymore.
Right. So it starts with that silent cycle, right? It's being silent about some of the things, and I call it suppressing as well. So, what do you think are some of the subtle signs someone might be carrying generational trauma without realizing it?
What we grow up with is our normal. It doesn't mean it's healthy, it doesn't mean it's positive, it's our normal. And so we carry it into the next generation because it's normal.
Hmm.
Now, only when we recognize that that's not what we want to have be normal for us, and we choose to change our framework of what constitutes normal,
Mm-hmm.
can we then really break that cycle, not only for us, but also for future generations, because they will see our new normal and their normal.
Right. So you have your personal story. Well, so what's one of the things that you did to help you to realize that it needs to break? What strategy did you use?
Well, the first thing I had to do is I had to escape. And I had tried a couple of things, and I'd finally told my mother what was happening. I had been dropping hints that she hadn't picked up on, and I had tried a couple of other things that didn't work. And so I told her in very direct language what was going on. And her response was, "Your father didn't really do anything. He just wanted to be close to you."
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, it devastated me. And I emotionally buried my mother that day. I was 15. But that's a very common response. What the words may be different, but the principle of denial is the same. And that's when I knew that if I was going to change the situation, I had to change the situation. And so I was ahead in school. I figured out how to graduate even earlier from high school. And I got myself on a college campus 2,500 miles from home 1 month after my 16th birthday. Now, that gave me physical safety,
Mm-hmm.
but I took all of the emotional crap with me.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, a few years later, I received a life altering epiphany. You are not responsible for your father's choices, but you are responsible for how you allow them to impact your life.
That part right there.
And that was huge. Now, there's still no books, no, there's still no internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I jumped into the self help arena. And
Mm-hmm.
I would find a principle and I would say, "Oh, that looks promising. Let's try it." And
Mm-hmm.
if it helped, I would put it in my basket. And if it didn't, I'd toss it and go look for another principle. And
Yeah, that's
ultimately,
good.
I had a bunch of principles in my basket that weren't connected.
Mm-hmm.
When the time came to start connecting them, and it was very much a process.
It is. So what you really saying is like you like re-educated yourself. You had to override all of those old thought processes and those old ways of thinking that we think are right because, like you said earlier, we're in them, so we think they're right in our life story. But if they don't make you feel good, and you know that it's not helping you on your road to success, then you have to do something about it, right?
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that we do when I work with people, and this again, it came from my own experience initially, is your story is what you experienced, what you felt then, how you feel now looking back on it, and how you feel about what was said to you. Not what was said to you, because in all probability that was a lie, but how you feel about it, because feelings drive behavior. And then it's going to be, well, what was going on in your abusers and your enablers or bullies' lives at the time? They chose to abuse you
Mm-hmm.
because they are masters at commingling their story with your story to make you responsible for their choices.
Mm-hmm.
You are never, ever, ever responsible for somebody else's choice.
And then it's like it goes back to you in your journey of healing because if you realize that obviously they had something going on in their lives, their childhood or young adulthood or whatever it may be, that caused them to do the things or to not to pay attention to the things that were happening to you, it helps you to forgive more and to move forward in your life, which is a big part of healing as well as that forgiveness factor.
Let me talk about forgiveness for just a minute, because society tends to say, forgive and forget and move on and it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness is for you. It is never condoning somebody else's choice. But if I hold on to their choice and the hurt and the anger and all of those emotions. In a way, becoming a co abuser, if you will, because I'm perpetuating the abuse of myself by holding on to all of that. When I forgive, not condone, but when I forgive, it lifts that burden of anger and hurt and pain off of my shoulders. So I am no longer choosing, and I choose that word very intentionally. I am no longer choosing to perpetuate their abuse of me. I am breaking the chain and achieving freedom from who they tried to tell me I was and who they tried to tell me I could become. I
Mhm.
have the freedom to choose who I am and where I'm going, how I'm going to get there, and who I become.
That is good. So, how can a person practically begin to break those toxic cycles when older family members still deny there's a problem?
Well, it starts by simply acknowledging the fact that there is a problem. Because here's what happens: a child is abused, and nobody is willing to recognize it, honor it, help them heal, validate their worth. And so it gets buried into their subconscious, and sometimes both on a conscious and subconscious level. And then when the reality of what they experience is denied, they're further damaged, they're further judged, they're further demeaned, their self
Mhm.
concept, their self esteem takes a greater hit. So the very first thing is to acknowledge that A, it happened, that your feelings are legitimate, that they are worth being honored. Now, I'm not giving you permission to live in victimhood for the rest of your life, but that your feelings are valid, that you're honoring them, and that you are choosing a different path. You may never change their attitude, but that doesn't mean you have to be controlled by their attitude. For
So,
the
how do you think a person could balance that, like honoring their family, legacy and roots, and being respectful, but at the same time rejecting those patterns that are inherited?
so here's one of the, I think, two things that are really really important. One is to recognize that you have a right to be who you are. And if they don't like it, that's their problem.
Mhm.
And we see so much political divide in families today, and so many other things that go on. And I think one of the most important things that we can share with one another is to be willing to respectfully disagree. And that you're entitled to your perspective. I'm entitled to my perspective. They may be different, but that doesn't mean that we have to judge one another. That means that we just simply accept that our life experiences are different and our perspectives are different.
Mhm. And respect. It is mostly about respecting, right? Instead of trying to change people, you have to respect them. And if they are not on the same accord with you, and if what they are doing or saying or how they're living their lifestyle is not nurturing your goal, that's when boundaries come in place. That's what the importance of boundaries are.
And boundaries are huge. And one of the things I do every year going into Thanksgiving is I publish some things about, ways of dealing, with boundaries with family situations, because it will be very common that, let's say, a father, an uncle, a brother abused a young woman.
Mhm.
And now there's this family gathering 20 years later. And in the meantime, her family has denied that it were a big deal, or told she was told to get over it, or she was told she was being a drama queen. And suddenly, she's expected to sit at the Thanksgiving table. right across the table from somebody who abused her, and that's never been acknowledged.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, there are things that we can do, like, for example, is know, and maybe warn your hostess, but know that if that person does something that is triggering you, like they're choosing to needle you or to perpetuate the abuse,
Uh-huh.
it's perfectly okay to say, that's not acceptable. You either stop or I leave.
Right.
And to be perfectly comfortable saying that.
Right.
That's part of when you own your story and you separate out the stories of abuse and enablers, you have a confidence that they no longer have the power to tell you who you are.
Right. That's the key. Take back your power and don't let anyone have power over you based off of what their power is in their lifestyle. So let's take a quick break. That's a great place to take a quick break and, take a little breath. And because this is heavy, because a lot of people, we give insight to a lot of people who don't even see these things happening. But that's why these type of conversations are so important so that we can bring some eyesight onto those areas that people don't see because they think it's normal. So let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
You weren't meant to break. You were set apart. What if your deepest pain was the birthplace of your greatest purpose? Meet Gingerbread, a child caught in the chaos of her mother's depression and suicide attempts. She never asked for trauma, shame, or to feel invisible, but she found something greater. Set Apart, the journey to find hope through loneliness, shame, and death is more than a book. It's the breakthrough you didn't know you needed. If you've ever said, "I'm fine," when you were falling apart. If you've ever thought, "This story isn't for me," it is. Don't let fear, excuses, or busyness rob you of healing. This book will shatter the silence, stir your soul, and remind you, you were never forgotten. You were set apart. Set Apart, the journey to find hope in times of shame, loneliness, and death, by author Virginia Dale Manning. Available now, because hope can't wait.
Okay, we are back with Miss Ada Lloyd. She has been giving us some great tips and tools to help you heal through any generational trauma or experiences that you may have had in your past, present, or possibly to stop it in the future. So, are you ready to continue with this impactful conversation?
Let's go.
Let's go. So, what are the first three steps someone should take today to start healing generational trauma emotionally and spiritually?
So the first step is simply to acknowledge that something is standing between them and their dreams. Maybe they know what it is, or maybe they just know that they're stuck and they can't move forward and they need to figure it out. The second step is to find the right vehicle, person, source to move forward. I am firmly of the opinion that God is a part of that conversation. I know that there are those that come from a different perspective, and to them I will say, let the universe be a part of that conversation. But for me, it is very much God, and it's finding the right person to help you. Now, that person might be a therapist, but I will say right now, a lot of therapists go around in circle about facts. You want one who will start with facts, but will then go to feelings and actions
Mhm.
so that you don't wind up in therapy for depression for 20 years, making no progress like one of my clients was.
Okay.
Um, and it might even be a trusted friend or family member that is open to just listening and validating your right to your feelings. You know, in a perfect world, I'd like to be that person because I know I can help.
Okay.
It's the right person for you.
That's important.
And then the third thing is action. And sometimes the place to start is what I call my yellow pad strategy. And it starts with a question that you write at the top of the page. Why do I feel why? So, in my instance, one of the things that I did when I was in this process is I knew I had an issue with rejection and it was hurting me professionally. That it was popping up and I just knew it wasn't serving me, but I didn't know where it came from. So I wrote, why do I have an issue with rejection? Well, the first three or four things that come up, you're going to go, oh, well, that's stupid. That's silly. Don't edit.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Someplace around number 4 or 5, your brain's going to go, bingo, that's it. For me, that bingo was you view your father's choice to abuse you as the ultimate paternal rejection. What came next was you view your mother's choice to deny it as the ultimate maternal rejection.
Mm-hmm.
What came next? You view Max, my ex husband's choice to want a divorce as the ultimate rejection by a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this time, my oldest daughter is making very poor life choices. You view Liz's choices as the ultimate rejection of your role as her mother.
Mm-hmm.
Think I had an issue around rejection?
Ah, the
Yeah.
common denominator. Yeah.
So what I tell people then is just write, not on the computer. This you need to do this with old-fashioned handwriting because
Mm-hmm.
there's something about when feelings come out from your head and your heart and out through your arm and into your hand and onto paper. They come out in a way that they just simply can't for the vast majority of people anyway
Yeah.
with a computer. And then when you're this may process may take 15 minutes, it may take 3 hours. When you are done, you will be physically and emotionally exhausted. Go take a nap, go down for the night, whatever. Come back 2 or 3 days later and then read what you have written. You will be amazed at the insights that you gain. And once you have those insights, you can then develop a strategy to deal with that issue.
'Cause that is not a good thing.
No, no. And it has to be a reasonable, viable plan.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, what I did was I created a scenario in my head. And let's say that you and I lived in the same area. I'm in Sacramento. So let's say that we both lived in Sacramento and you had a friend that was visiting that you really wanted to meet for lunch, but the only way you were going to be able to do it would be to meet her in San Francisco. So
Mm-hmm.
you decided to go to San Francisco today. Well, in the meantime, I decided I need some real shopping. I'm going to San Francisco. I had no clue you were there. You had no clue I was there. But I saw you with your friend walking down the street, busy talking, having a grand time. And I had no reason to believe that you had seen me. And even if you had out of the corner of your eye, you probably would have thought, oh, that gal over there looks a little bit like Ada, but she's in Sacramento. And but my reaction because of my rejection vulnerability
Mm-hmm.
would have been to say, oh, Virginia doesn't think I'm good enough to say hello to when she's with her friend. No basis in reality. If anybody had a right to feel rejected in that circumstance, it would be you because I saw you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too busy feeling rejected to acknowledge you.
In your feelings.
And so what I learned was when those feelings came up, the first question I had to ask myself, well, let me back up. The first, I had to kind of replay that scenario in my brain. Then the question I had to ask myself is, are the feelings that you are experiencing about what is happening right now, are they about all of the old stuff that is coming up and framing what is going on right now? 95% of the time, plus, they're about the old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a couple of years of me having to replay that scenario in my mind before it became automatic and the issue gradually went away.
That's
Now,
good.
even today, 20 years later, every once in a while, something will pop up and rejection will pop up. And it's like, oh, are you really going here again? You know? And it's like a 30-second, mental exercise to send it on its way.
Mm-hmm.
About having tools to deal with emotions that come up.
That's good.
And so, one of the things when somebody goes through my program that I'm absolutely passionate about is them having a tool belt when they leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that we have addressed like the 800-pound elephant that's affecting them today. There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be other things in the past, things in the present, or things in the future where they're going to have a vulnerability. But if they have a tool belt, that's not scary
Mm-hmm.
because they have the confidence that they are able to deal with it.
Right. Well, Miss Ada, this brings me to my favorite part of the show, and it is the spotlight question, the speaker spotlight. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
All right. So, what's one mindset shift or action you believe could transform how we approach mental health in our daily lives?
I'm going to give you a two-part answer to that question. If you knew somebody who broke their leg, and even if they did it doing something crazy like aerial skiing, where they jump out of a helicopter, onto the ski slopes, and that was how they broke their leg. Yeah, extreme sport, maybe a little bit crazy to make that choice, but you're not going to judge them as being broken as a person. You might say they're foolhardy, but you're not going to diminish the essence of who they are.
Mm-hmm.
With mental illness, that's one of the things that we are vulnerable to doing, whether it's in ourselves or in somebody else, is that we diminish their value as an individual because they are broken,
Mm-hmm.
because they are dot, 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 whatever. That's the first thing that I would say to that. And the second thing I would say is I've got a client, I briefly referenced her a few minutes ago. She was in depression and in therapy for 20 years, but she also is bipolar. And her depression was not clinical depression, it was normal garden variety depression. And in week 2, she told me for the first time in 20 years she felt her depression lifting. Now that we're at the, near the end, we're in week 11 of a 12-week program, she's a different person, but she
Mm-hmm.
still has bipolar.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a combination of what you can choose to do something about and what your choices are limited in what you can do. So
Mm-hmm.
with her bipolar, she is very diligent about staying on her meds.
Right.
With her depression, she has learned that the things that triggered that when she was 14 years old were never about her. It
Mm.
was all about somebody else's choices and all of the judgments that layered upon that over the years. And as she has owned her story and released their stories, her depression has lifted, and she's now creating a plan for her future that a few months ago she was incapable of even thinking about.
A real success story.
So it's a combination. There's things that we can manage and things we have to just simply um, make the choice to do what we need to do to change.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure people getting a lot out of it and going to make some real changes in their lives today. So let them know how to connect with you, and then if you have some type of special offer for them.
Absolutely. So, first of all, you can find me on LinkedIn or on YouTube as Ada Lloyd, Adalloyd. But on Facebook, you have to put a G in the middle of that. It's Ada G. Lloyd because I was hacked a year and a half ago and I had to reinvent myself, if you will, because Facebook was absolutely no help. And one of the things that I do on Facebook is 2 or 3 times a week, I have a post that's really devoted to helping people, giving them a tool, a suggestion, a case study, whatever, because most importantly, I want people to know that they're not that unique, that they are entitled to hope and there is a path forward to healing. I do have an ebook that I'm happy to give to all of your listeners is called Shattering Hidden Barriers. And it identifies some of the things that I talked about at the beginning and simple ways to start to address them.
Okay, perfect. Well, we want you to know that you are not broken. You are a cycle breaker and your healing is holy work. And we want to thank you for tuning in to another awesome episode of Girl Talk Mental Health. And we will see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for Girl Talk Mental Health. Remember, your mental health is your wealth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to at Virginia Del Manning.